Olá a todos, sejam muito bem-vindos. Eu sou Isaías Marques, do canal AnarcoGeek. Eu estou aqui com a Lígia, da nossa equipe, da AnarcoGeek. Estamos também com o pessoal da Vox2U. E hoje também com o Tomás, ajudando na parte de tradução, porque hoje nós vamos entrevistar Titus Gebel, criador do projeto Free Private Cities, que vai estar dando uma entrevista exclusiva aqui para nós, do pessoal da AnarcoGeek, que vai ser postado com muito agradecimento, eu agradeço muito de todo o coração, ao canal Lobo Conservador, que vai estar postando esse vídeo aí para vocês. Pode ser que tenha alguns problemas, galera, pode ser que tenhamos algumas interrupções, alguns cortes durante a edição, talvez até pela preparação. Vai ser uma das primeiras vezes que nós vamos entrevistar uma pessoa do estrangeiro, e eu não estou muito preparado, eu digo com certa realidade que eu estou um pouco nervoso com essa oportunidade que apareceu para a gente, de poder estar entrevistando uma pessoa que criou um projeto que é totalmente do nosso interesse, totalmente do interesse do meio libertário. Uma cidade onde finalmente a gente vai ter uma governança onde a gente possa estabilizar ela por escolha, a gente possa ter ela por escolha. Uma governança que não vai ser imposta sobre nós, mas nós iremos finalmente poder escolher ser governados ou não, e como nós desejamos ser governados a partir dos nossos contratos. Então, por essa oportunidade de ser tão grande e já está virando uma realidade tão próxima da gente, a gente lutou muito para conseguir ter essa entrevista com o Titus Gebel hoje, ok? E vamos começar. Eu gostaria primeiro, antes de mais nada, que o pessoal a Lígia faça a sua apresentação, tá bom? Pode começar, fique à vontade, Lígia.
Bom dia. Eu sou a Lígia, trabalho atualmente na equipe AnarcoGeek. Também trabalho na Vox2U, que é uma empresa especializada em treinamentos de oratória e envolvimento no Partido Novo, no qual ambos estamos interessados em conhecer o projeto e fazer futuras negociações para a implementação do projeto na América Latina, especialmente no Brasil.
So Titus, Lígia is a digital influencer. She has a channel here in Brazil, and she's also involved with Partido Novo, the new party, which was just introduced in this for the first time in the federal elections. We elected, if I'm not wrong, 8 representatives in the state, and actually 4 in the local São Paulo state legislature. 2, if I'm not wrong, actually, and 8 in the federal chamber. So she's really proud to be able to interview you, and that's it.
Primeiramente, Tomás, eu gostaria que o Titus agora se apresentasse, falasse um pouco sobre o dia de hoje, sobre o que está aqui com a gente, para depois nós já entrarmos nas partes de perguntas. Você pode falar para ele que é só para ele fazer uma apresentação breve dele, da história dele, ou de alguma coisa que ele deseja falar, e posteriormente já começamos com a entrevista.
Okay, Titus, could you please do a brief presentation on your project and yourself, and then we'll go to a Q&A session afterwards, okay?
Yeah, with pleasure. I'm happy to be here and be able to tell you about my concept. But let me first say something about my person. I'm 51 years old. I'm an entrepreneur coming from Germany, but now residing in Monaco. I'm a lawyer by education, and I was involved in politics in Germany for about 30 years, more than 30 years, in the classical liberal spectrum, so not so far from what you guys are doing. And at the same time, I was successful in founding an oil and gas and mining company, which became eventually big. And I could retire, so to speak, at the end of 2014. And then moved to Monaco. What I learned in those years is that my ideas of liberty, of self-responsibility, of free markets are not shared by the majority of the people. And this is no difference between Germany, even countries like Switzerland and the US. The majority will always vote for the guys who are promising free lunch, redistribution, and comprehensive social security. So this is, I mean, congratulations for your party being so successful and now being elected for the first time. But my personal experience is that even libertarian parties or classical liberal parties have to switch to redistribution parties if they want to stay successful in the political spectrum, especially in mass democracies. And so for me, it was only one decision. Then after I moved to Monaco, it was okay. I now can try for another 30 years to convince people of freedom, or I do something completely different to reach my goals within a lifetime. And I decided that the latter way is probably a more successful one. And what I came up is the idea that what we are, the concepts under which we are living together, the systems in which we are living, are also part of a market. And I call it the market of living together, right? So then even if a political party is promoting socialism and all that stuff and is elected by the people, this is a market result, right? In a way. Now, I can say people, well, freedom is better and all that, but they won't listen to me because it's so much easier to vote something who promises you that he gives you some money for free. And so far, the only chance we have is to create a new product, which then eventually will be accepted by the others because they can see that it's working. And this new product, what I want to introduce into the market of living together, is called a free private city. And when I was in Monaco, let me give you some background on how this idea was coming together. When I was in Monaco a year, I thought, here's something strange is happening. I was always interested in politics, but I have absolutely zero interest to become involved into Monaco politics. Why is this so? And I asked myself, and I think and gave myself the answer. Well, basically what I want here is to have security for me and my family, low taxes, and I want to be left alone to make my businesses. And then I ask around other people residing in Monaco. You have to know that 80% of the people there are not monegasque citizens. They are coming from all parts of the world, mostly Europeans. And many of them told me the same story. We have businesses everywhere. We want to be left alone. We are willing to pay a fair share for security and legal dispute resolution, and that's it. And then I thought, okay, if this is the case, that people are searching for protection of life, liberty, and property, and they're willing to pay something for that, well, we do not need a prince or a government to do that. A private company could offer that, right? A private company, and the big difference would be that this is another big angle I was thinking about. This, you have heard about this social contract, right? So that's what we are told, that we are living together based on a social contract. Well, here's one problem. If it's a contract, why is one side entitled to change the contract constantly, and it's always the other side? It's not us, right? The other side is always changing the social contract. And I said, okay, something is wrong with that. Right?
Always change, always.
Yeah, and the secret is it's not us, right? It's always them who are changing the contract. And here's the thing. I mean, look. If I put those things together, okay, protection of life, liberty, and property, dispute resolution, some infrastructure, and a real contract, right? Not a fictional social, a real written contract on paper saying this is the maximum I have to pay, and these are my rights, and nobody can change this contract unilaterally. And so the idea of free private cities was born. That is, in a nutshell, the idea. Probably you will have some questions how it is coming into reality, but that is the idea of free private city. It's a private company offering protection of life, liberty, and property for a defined, fixed amount per year. We do this for profit, so it's completely transparent. We are not in it for saving the world. We are in it for making profit, but it's completely transparent. You get what you paid for. and you don't pay more, and I cannot change the rules unilaterally. That's the model.
So thanks, Titus. Thanks very well. But I need to start the interview, and I like to know the start your life. Where your life began? Onde sua vida começou?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Germany, in particular in southern Germany, in Heidelberg. I don't know if some of you know that. It's a nice university town of about 150,000 people, with a very long tradition, university tradition. And I studied law and wanted to become a diplomat. That was my initial idea, but I later came to the idea that it's maybe better to be more independent, and became a lawyer for the first 5 years of my career, my professional career, but then decided that this is nothing I want to do for the rest of my life. And I switched into the industry and eventually became an entrepreneur who started a company called Deutsche Rohstoff AG, a mining and oil and gas company, which went public in 2010 at the Frankfurt Stock Exchange. The following years was very successful, especially with oil and gas production in Colorado, US. And I could eventually retire at the end of 2014 from my job as president and CEO of this company, and moved to Monaco with my family.
Tomás, me ajuda. Qual foi o maior ápice financeiro dele? Assim, onde ele conseguiu o maior estouro? Onde ele teve o melhor momento da vida dele em questão de financeiramente falando?
Okay, Titus, Isaiah is asking where was the time of your life that you had like the best financial moment? Of course, you had the IPO that you said in 2014 when you retired, but during your business period, your business time, what were like the most special moments, financially speaking, the most breakthrough moments that you can remember?
Oh yeah, certainly. I mean, the IPO was relatively successful, but it was not a super success. But 2 years or 3 years later, because we did the right investments in the oil in Colorado, we could basically, we invested about 30 million, and we could sell it then 3 years later for 230 million. Right, so that was really the company maker, and was an oil field we developed from 0 up to 10,000 barrels a day, right, in very short period of time. And here's the thing, which is also important. I mean, I had some experience in the mining industry, but not so much in oil and gas, and so we had to rely on our experts that were in the US. And I remember one day when we were already dreaming of building $1 billion company with our oil and gas. Then our CEO of the US oil subsidiary came to me and said, Titus, 3 things are happening. And I've been in the industry for 30 years. 3 things are happening. Oil prices are high, above $100. We have an excellent relationship with the community we are working together and we are producing in, and the regulatory environment is relatively friendly to us. And I said, and he said, it can only get worse. We should sell. Right? And I thought, let me think, let me sleep over that, right? And eventually I said, okay, this guy has been in the oil industry for 30 years. And you have to know it's a very cyclical industry, right? Ups and downs. It's always the typical cycle it's always there. And I said, okay, I mean, maybe he has seen those cycles several times and I have seen maybe one. And I should listen to those people. And look what happened. We eventually sold. And about 4 weeks later, the oil price collapsed from $120 to $50. right?
It's a
So
very lucky.
well, not only we had a good deal, but we also went out at the right time. But here's the thing: this is not only coincidental, because I listened to what people have to say. They were experienced.
Tomás, agora, por favor, pergunta para ele qual foi o momento mais difícil, assim, financeiramente mesmo, assim, as maiores dificuldades financeiras que ele enfrentou ao longo da carreira dele aí na indústria de óleo, na indústria de petróleo, na indústria de gás.
Perfect. Titus, very interesting thoughts, but there's the other way around, of course. So Isaias wants to know a little bit about the worst moments you had in the industry and what made you survive and get through that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the name of the game, right? You have successful moments and you have not so successful moments. I remember in the beginning of our company, that was about 2 years after we founded it, or 3 years, where we were still small, and that was after 2008, where everything was going down, and we said, okay, we have to relocate our business and do a little bit more investment in the gold. Not only industrial metals, gold, because gold is a hedge against all these problems and the crisis and all that. And eventually we discovered a project in Australia, a gold mine that was care and maintenance, and we had to refurbish that gold mine, and we spent a lot of money, and it still needed not much, another 2 million or so. And we had eventually found a private investor from Germany who was willing to lend us the money to make this thing running, and so that we can finally make money out of this gold mine, where all capital at that point was deployed. And I remember today, when this guy was calling us, where we were really hoping that we could now close with him, he was calling us. He was calling the CFO, which was in the office beneath my office. And I can remember until today when this guy said, "I'm going to withdraw, I'm not giving you the loan." And I thought for myself, that's the end. That is the end of the company, right? And but then I could talk him into reconsidering this decision, right? And eventually we got the loan from him. Eventually the gold mine got into production, and we later could sell it with a significant profit. But I mean, that is a situation that also could have gone into the other direction, right? And then maybe I would not be here today.
I'm glad it did happen in the end. Otherwise we wouldn't have this amazing project. Isaias?
Thank you, Titus. Tomás, agora isso me gerou uma pergunta que eu acho bem interessante. Como ele começou a investir em ouro e tudo mais, primeiro, se ele sabe da importância que o projeto dele tem para o meio libertário, que é, na verdade, se ele já sabia que era uma ideia libertária quando ele começou a projetar na cabeça dele o projeto Free Private Cities.
Titus, so Isaias wants to know a little bit more on, well, whenever you started the project, if you had any idea that this was a libertarian idea of some kind. I know that in your initial brief presentation, you did say that you had some roots in a more classical liberal movement, but for the libertarians specifically, this is a flag they raise really dearly, and he wants to understand, like, if you have the conscience of how important the breakthrough you're doing with your project is, and how are you relating to other libertarian organizations?
Yeah, no, I was basically all of my life I was a liberty-loving person, but I only discovered libertarianism, I would say, really after 2008, the global financial crisis, when I really thought the explanations that the people are giving to us, especially the mainstream and the press, that this is about greed and egoism. I said that is not possible, because greed and egoism are always there. So there has to be another explanation, right? And then I dig deeper into that, Ludwig von Mises and Hayek, and of course Atlas Shrugged and all those stuff. And and basically read everything. So I'm well aware of all the minarchism, anarchism discussion and all that. As I said, there's a more classical liberal party in Germany, which turned into a more social liberal party over the years where I was engaged, and the idea to make liberty. I mean, I was convinced that this is just not only a better working system, but it's also a fair system, because it's built on reciprocity and everybody has the same rights, and it's all based on voluntariness. So I consider myself a voluntarist, and that is reflected in the idea that the Free Private City, my project, is only for people who are voluntary citizens or residents, right? There's nobody's forced to go there, nobody's forced to stay there. If you don't like it, go somewhere else. And I think that it's good to talk about, and it's all very important to have parties, associated parties in parliament. We will talk about that later, why you need that. But if you really want to make liberty happen, it's not possible within the current systems, right? The incentives are different, and the people don't want that. People in the majority do not prefer self-responsibility, but they prefer if somebody's taking care of them. That is something that is a bitter truth to many libertarians, but I think we have to face reality. If I'm a candidate for a libertarian party and I tell the people, vote for me, I do nothing for you, right? And the other is telling them, vote for me, you get everything for free because you're entitled, it's your human right to everything, right? Guess who will win the election, right? And then so far we have to come from a different angle.
Então, uma pergunta assim, antes de a gente entrar no projeto Free Private Cities. Se você já conhecia, estava estudando os ciclos econômicos, a escola austríaca de economia, até para nas influências de como você dirigiu as suas empresas e tudo mais.
So, during business times, back in the day when you work, right? I'm just kidding. Now you're working for the good of humanity, right? But if you knew by that time a little bit about Mrs. Economic cycle theory, and if you did apply that to your enterprises in a general way or not.
Well, yes, certainly. I mean, if you think about why I was going into the resources industry, that was basically by reading newspapers in 2004. And I said, okay, for 20 years, nothing has happened in the resources industry. And now suddenly China is coming. And if you combine this with the economic cycle theory of Mises and the inflation of fiat money, it is clear. I mean, how can somebody, I started my company with a partner who was former director of the German Stock Exchange, by the name Thomas, and we invested together 400,000 euros, right? And eventually, this company had a market value of 130 million. I mean, this is only possible because of inflationary pressure, right? Within a time frame of 6 years. That happened, right? I mean, and that wouldn't have possible in earlier times, especially not in such an old primary industry like resources. But that is, I'm relatively sure that is a clear indicator that Mises is right, that this is the fiat money is flooding the world, and there is an inflation, but it's not on the daily stuff, it's the asset inflation, right? I mean, we sold a small mine, a lousy mine, for 13 million, which was worth maybe 3, right? And that is because money is looking for investment. I was looking at that time for investment in the resources industry, and you get tremendous valuations, which were unreal, right? But they were based on the oversupply of money. I'm relatively sure that is also one of the explanations why we could sell an oil field for $230 million.
Thank you, Titus. Pessoal, como vocês podem ver, uma pessoa que está na própria indústria, que viveu aí muitos anos na indústria, se aposentou na indústria, prova de uma forma muito clara que os conhecimentos tanto de ciclos austríacos quanto a escola de economia austríaca, o quanto ela é importante, o quanto é importante você reconhecer esses ciclos até para os seus investimentos, para as escolhas que você vai fazer na sua vida, ok? E eu acho isso muito importante para mostrar mais uma vez que você pode estar sendo enganado, você pode estar sendo iludido com ideias que não são funcionais e a realidade está sendo escondida de você. Então tomem muito cuidado mesmo, sobretudo vocês que pretendem ou estão fazendo investimentos hoje em dia, tá bom? Aproveitando um pouco dessa experiência de vida do Titus, agora a gente vai entrar diretamente no projeto Free Private Cities. Ele já falou um pouco de quando surgiu a ideia e tudo mais, mas eu gostaria que ele fosse bem específico no momento, no dia, na hora que de repente piscou aquela luz na cabeça dele e ele falou, mano, isso tá muito errado e eu posso fazer certo, eu quero fazer diferente, eu consigo, baseado na minha experiência, baseado na minha vida, eu consigo propor algo que vai ser aceito dentro dessas questões da realidade que são relevantes e eu consigo propor um projeto relevante para muitas pessoas, sobretudo para pessoas que querem fazer investimentos e não querem, como ele já disse no começo, que o governo fique se metendo, mudando as regras do jogo, que querem apenas ter segurança para ele, para suas famílias e que querem trabalhar e querem produzir riqueza.
Boa pergunta, Isaías. So Titus, you did tell a little bit about how you started the project, but he wants to know a little bit more in depth on the moment that you actually had not only had the idea, but got the guts to actually start it, and how did you feel? Like, did you feel as a successful businessman that you were the right person to do it? And when was that light moment that we see on cartoons? I think that pretty much sums it up.
Yeah, I mean, I remember there was one invitation I got from a friend who was at that time CEO of UBS in Germany, a big Swiss bank. And there was a famous professor called Professor Kirchhoff who was promoting a tax reform, right? Making everything simple and all that. And I was visiting this guy and hearing him at his speech and presentation, and he was so full of that everything has to be done, that the state is flourishing, and he was a kind of a statist 100%. And I said, okay, if this guy is the best case that can happen to us liberty people in Germany, it's time to leave. And it's basically no chance of ever turning that country into a liberty country unless we separate us and make something completely new. And look, the good thing was I was financially independent. I could afford that. And I said, okay, what I've learned in my life is following things. People do not, you cannot convince people. You have to show the people that it's really working, and then they will come. The second is you have to be persistent and try again and again. And you have to know how business works and do it for profit. Otherwise, it's not working. I studied a lot of these libertarian projects, Werner Stiefel and Minerva project and all those things. I think most of them failed because there were just a group of libertarians, 3 libertarians, 5 different ideas, right? So it's not really working. But if you organize this as a business, it is much more straightforward and much more pushy. And if you do it for profit, you have incentive to not to waste your time and your resources and to treat your customers well. So the combination of that, I said, okay, I can now live in Monaco and have fun for the rest of my life, or I can do something that is really, but this would have been boring, right? I wanted to change the world. I wanted to do something. So I tell people, okay, it's a for-profit business, but of course the motive is a more philosophical one. But I think if we take seriously what we're always discussing and claiming, that the market is superior to political decision making. Well, then put the market onto our system of living together, right? And let different systems compete. And I said, okay, at that time I said I'm nearly 50 years old. I'm going to spend the rest of my life, hopefully another 50 years, to making this happen. So I have a lot of time, and I have a lot of persistence, and I have a lot of patience. So I'm going to try it again and again. And then I was writing my book, explaining how this could work. So if I fail, others can pick it up, right? If I die in a car crash or in a plane accident, others can pick it up from there and bring it to the next level. And so from then on, it was about 2014 when I was already about to leave Germany that I was completely decided to make this happen, and I am. It's going to happen. It's there. Nobody can stop this idea. They can stop me, but they cannot stop the idea.
They can't be stopped at all. Yeah, it's like Bitcoin.
Continuando então a partir daí, ele já falou muito o que ele deseja com ele, já deixou muito claro isso pra gente, isso foi muito importante. E vamos então para a parte prática, vamos para a parte técnica. Onde vai ser implantado e quando o Free Private System? Ele já é uma realidade em algum país? Você já está em negociação? Se já está acontecendo em algum lugar? Ou por enquanto apenas estamos na fase de divulgação da ideia?
Okay. So Titus, pretty practical question. Let's get dirty in his words and ask about how is it working? And do you have what are the initial plans? Do you have it negotiated with any government? Because we have to figure that out. And what are the next steps for free private city?
Yes. Well, first of all, I wrote 3 years on my book from 2015 to 2018 to really formulate ideas and get the philosophical groundwork right. And this book has been published in 2018 in German and English. It's now coming in Russian, and I think in April it's coming in Portuguese language for the Brazilian market, especially.
Sure. Awesome. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, my pleasure. I have a lot of interest in Brazil, and I'm really happy to introduce my ideas to you, and maybe we get a free private city at some point in time in Brazil. But here's the problem. The question is justified. One of the learnings we had from earlier libertarian models was that you cannot act against governments. The states always have more power. And if you try to occupy a free space, they will declare that it's not free any longer, right? It belongs to them or whatever. That happened in Pacific.
Liberland, that's an example. Liberland, that's an example.
Yeah,
it's indeed. I mean, the Liberland, the idea is good that it says, okay, there's a part of territory which is unclaimed by both neighboring states, not claimed by Croatia, not claimed by Serbia, which is in theory correct, but in practice it's only unclaimed as long as until one of the states says, I've decided differently, and that happened with Croatia, right? That's the problem. And that is one of the learnings. Nevertheless, Liberland is a good exercise. It's a good approach, and it has helped the movement of startup societies a lot. But here's the thing. I was starting from the beginning with, we have to negotiate with countries, and we have one, and I gave myself 5 to 10 years after my book was written to make it happen. And the reality is it's happening this year, okay? So it's much quicker than expected. And the point is that you have to approach governments with not we are disrupting you. You approach them saying it's a win-win situation. It's a kind of a special economic zone plus, right? And we have more autonomy, but it's not more than Hong Kong has towards China, right? So you grab things that are already existing. Special economic zones, Hong Kong as a special administrative zone, and you put this together and say, you give us the autonomy and we bring you investments and jobs. And it's in the nature of the game that stable countries are not interested. More not so stable countries, I mean, okay, that's clear. They have to do something, so they're more flexible. Now, I have been approached by a group from the US who is active in the Caribbean. And they have similar ideas. And the country in the Caribbean, in Central America, has made it possible. It was a long procedure. I was only coming in basically late to the party, but was still early enough to implement my ideas. And they have made a law which is a more public-private partnership model. It's not exactly a free private city, but we try to make it as private as possible. And so it's about 70% a free private city. And the only thing that we have permit in place, everything, the only thing that is missing is the permit for our courts. We have an own courts, right, which is completely independent from the courts of this country, manned with retired judges of first world countries. And now they need approval by the government or the Supreme Court of this country. And once we have this, I can make it public. At the moment, it's still, I cannot say which country it is, where it is, but I can tell you it's really very close. And there are even other countries that might be interested for follow-up projects. So it's happening. And but it's not easy, because in many countries you need to adapt the constitution to make it happen, to make a special law. And that is why it's important that you have your party and your representatives in Congress and the parliaments, because they can initiate such ideas. And if you tell them, well, look, let's try it in an area where nobody is living. Nobody can lose. It's a win-win. If it's good, we can replicate it. If it's bad, we close it down again. And even lefties or socialists can come up with their own ideas, right? Nothing against socialism as long as participation is voluntary, which is normally not the case, right? But if it was the case, right?
In a sense.
Yeah, look, this is the thing, you can advertise our model. You can say it's not only for libertarians. Well, we are presenting the libertarian version, but you can present your version. After all, it's a market and there are different products possible. And the society can watch this experimental labs. Let's assume Brazil, right? Can say, we are allowing 5 different private or public or whatever cities in those areas. Everyone should have a different system so we can compare what is working and what is not working. And so nobody can say, well, it's only colonialist, capitalist stuff. No, you have different models.
Amazing model.
And I'm willing to compete against Paul Krugman, all Keynesians of the world, against Thomas Piketty, against Maduro, you name it, right? I'm competing against you. All the big names, I'm willing to compete against you. Austrian economics against the rest of the world, and then let's see who is performing better.
Awesome.
Só para agora, para a gente pegar algumas ideias práticas, ele falou que está esperando apenas uma decisão da Suprema Corte desse país que ele está querendo implantar. E, então, quer dizer assim, está muito perto, muito perto. Aí eu gostaria de saber, nessa questão, a questão de parcerias. Como está a questão de parcerias? Quem vai fornecer, por exemplo? Ele tem já o fornecimento de segurança como como certo do projeto, ok? Eu gostaria de saber se já existem empresas associadas que já estão interessadas em, por exemplo, fornecer energia, água, essas necessidades básicas para que as outras empresas possam surgir, para que os outros serviços possam surgir.
Okay. So pretty much you got it really advanced. It's only a Supreme Court decision now, and specifically with this issue of the courts, which is kind of sensitive in a way, because they won't have the full sovereignty of the territory. Anyways, what he's asking is, regarding private enterprises, what are the partnerships that you have already established or establishing, and specifically regarding to basic infrastructure like water, energy, security, and all the other basic necessities. Like, how is it? It's pretty much like how's the kickoff going to be like, and those first relationships be established.
Yes, so it's a combination of different things. One is we are approaching existing companies that are private enterprises that are around for electricity and water, for example. We are going to the neighboring communities and say, can you provide firefighters for us until we have our own, and we are willing to pay something for that, right? And then eventually we'll have our own power plant. But in the beginning, right, we're linking to existing businesses. Then there are businesses who are just not there. We have to found them by ourselves. We have established a fund who's investing in these businesses. And later, if there are other competitors, we can sell those businesses and let the market do it. But in the beginning, not enough businesses are there for garbage disposal and that stuff. So you form an own entity. You can make some money with that if it's successful, right? You sell it later to one of your residents who wants to run it, right? And one thing that we are not giving away is security. We will maybe hire different private security organizations as police, but we will keep the oversight and the monopoly of force, if you want, because this is basically our main product, security, right? If we get this wrong, it's over. And in I think the protection against, we are monopolists, but the protection against us is that there are other entities around, right? And now I often make this example from Monaco, where we have a prince. As you know, it's a constitutional monarchy, so the prince can veto any law the parliament is coming up and can introduce own laws. So on paper, he has a lot of power and can do everything he wants with us. But if he would do that, we would just move away, right? And he knows that. And for that very reason, he's not coming up with crazy regulation. And this would be the same in a free private city, because it's my reputation as an entrepreneur. I want to make this successful. I want to make other free private cities elsewhere in the world. So I have to treat my customers well. I have to stick to my own rules in a contract, right? And I should not behave like a dictator, because otherwise people would say, better stay away from that guy, right? So, and I go insolvent. That is my incentive. I have own money, skin in the game. So I have to really present a good product, and I have also to treat my customers well.
Só mais uma pergunta técnica. Essa pergunta veio do Twitter, foi uma das poucas perguntas que eu separei, porque foi uma pergunta muito interessante. Uhum. Pós-fundamento, pós a fundação estar pronta, as empresas de necessidade básica e tudo mais, como eles pretendem, vamos dizer assim, dar o visto, permitir a entrada de cidadãos comuns até para executar os trabalhos que vão ser necessários, né, para essas empresas que vão ser fundadas lá?
Bem interessante. Titus, so this is a Twitter question. And pretty much he's talking about border security. Okay, are you gonna? No, that's my phrase. Okay, but are you building a wall around it? How is the visa process going to work?
Yeah, but it depends where you are, right? If you are in an environment where there's a lot of crime, you probably will have to build a wall or a fence or something like that. In an area where it's not so bad, it's enough to have cameras, and if somebody is intruding, you send a patrol. Basically, that's how they do it in Monaco. But the thing is, you have to control who is in your territory, who is coming. You can make it very easy in the beginning and say everybody can come, but probably you will ask people, okay, about a criminal record. You will ask them, you will make some research if they're political or religious extremists. You will maybe know, how do you want to make a living? And do you have a place to stay, right? And these are the typical questions that city-states would ask you, right? And there's no much difference in the free private city. You can say, let's assume you say, I have nothing, but I'm willing to work hard. And I'm willing to obey the rules of the free private city. And I said, well, in principle, you can come, right? No matter where you come from, if you are willing to accept the rules, the golden rule, basically, And if you are, you have, you know how to make some money to make up for your living, then that's okay. But you can, for example, ask people that they present some kind of employment contract or so. I don't think that is a big problem. But we also have to be sure that organized criminality, political troublemakers, we won't let them in, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. Lígia, a Lígia deu uma caidinha. Eu tenho mais uma pergunta da parte técnica também, que seria sobre como eles pretendem se defender caso após alguns anos, vamos dizer que passou assim, uns 50 anos, a cidade está indo muito bem e o governo olha e fala, nossa, poxa, aquele povo daquela cidadezinha, daquele espaçozinho que a gente deu para essa galera, tá muito mais rico do que o nosso povo aqui. Então acho que a gente pode cobrar muito mais, depois podemos mudar as regras do jogo, né? Change the game, mudar as regras do contrato que a gente já estipulou há 50 anos atrás com eles, para aumentar as taxação ou de repente até quebrar a coisa mesmo. Falar, não, a partir de agora vocês voltam a ser parte nossa.
Ou poderia ser até um ataque militar, possivelmente, né?
Exatamente.
So, Titus, this is an interesting question. So, okay, everything went well, and 50 years from now, that state that made that contract got jealous or got mad in some way. Okay, there's a madman in power and he wants to redo the contract. Like, how would you handle that? Like, it could be either like a legal problem or even a war problem eventually. Like, how would you go from protecting yourself legally or even from an invasion, like in a last case scenario, you know? Like, we're of course extrapolating a little bit, but we just want to consider if you're considering those issues in a general way.
Oh yes, this is one of the most important questions of all. And if you are successful, that things like that will happen is not the exception, that will be the rule, right? Somebody wants to renegotiate a contract and get more money out of us, that's clear, right? So here's the thing. We have a variety of mechanisms to defend ourselves in the beginning in our Central American project, and the first and foremost, it's in investor protection treaties. You have bilateral investor protection treaties. You have multilateral investor protection treaties. So the trick is that you put your company who is managing the city, you make it in one of those countries that has a bilateral investor protection agreement with the host nation you are in. So you are protected. If they change the law or whatever, that's expropriation, and they have basically signed this contract, and you can put them for arbitration and then even seize their assets, like people did with Argentina when they were not willing to pay their bonds. That is the biggest real world protection we have at the moment, right? The second, then you have a lot of things. You need local support in the country, not in your city, but around people and communities who are benefiting from you. And they are political allies against the central government who wants to make additional income. Then we have a message for the central government. Say, the reason why this city is successful is because it's so free. If you now come with your troops and make it a part of your country, we are going to leave, right? We are all just disappearing, and not all of them, but maybe 80% just go away. And then no more income, right? So it's probably better that we're giving something, right? In this particular country, the deal is 12% of our income goes to the country. It's just a deal, right? And if you now invade us, it will be 0%. That's at least my claim. And then you have celebrities from foreign countries who are your friends, who are residing there. You have other reputable institutions and countries who are your allies.
Soft power.
And this is basically, it's a variety of mechanisms. But this will always be a challenge. So it's a very justified question.
Very interesting.
Agora eu vou estar passando para a Lígia fazer algumas perguntas também, Ana, e o pessoal da Vox to You, tá bom? Aí, Tomás, você dá uma força para eles, eu também vou dando uma força.
Então, eu só vou começar, por enquanto, com umas perguntas um pouco mais técnicas do projeto, até mesmo para uma avaliação da empresa. Eu queria entender mais do Titus, como foi o processo de formação da equipe dele, se ele tem uma equipe, se é uma equipe grande, pequena, se foi difícil para ele treinar essas pessoas, porque, querendo ou não, é uma ideia, assim, grande, é um projeto grande, que eu acredito que precisa de bastante gente trabalhando para propagar isso em diversos lugares.
Okay. So Titus, starting with a technical question. First and foremost, like, how did you manage to form your team, apply training, like, so they have the same mindset as the project, and also, like, in more general terms, like, what's the organization model that you use to make this all happen?
Yes, so it's a twofold answer. For some areas, you will find out people who are ideologically aligned, libertarians who have similar ideas, and they have a certain expertise. But for other areas, there are no experts. You just have to take people who are experts or who are friends or who have I met during my career, so that I know that I have something to say to this particular aspect. For example, construction or IT or whatever. I mean, there are maybe 1,000 people from the libertarian spectrum who can advise me on blockchain and crypto issues, but maybe 1 or 2 on electricity, right? and power plants. So this is so you pick up your team and make it a mix. And many things are happening on a contractual basis. So I have not employed those people, but they are kind of subcontractors. And the first project I'm talking about, I'm not alone. I'm partnering with the US company who has the lead in this project. So I'm currently having the role of a chief operating officer to make it happen, and I'm doing all the legal framework. But this is only preliminary until the project is up and running. I'm also an investor in this US company. But so that you form alliances with other groups, regional groups as well, and then you put together a team which is specific for this particular free private city. If you are in another part of the world, the team would look different.
How much people you have in the team?
Yeah, involved as subcontractors and employees.
I would say people involved now in the project, actively involved in the project in Central America, with 20-25, who are at least 5 of them are lawyers. So a lot of legal work has to be done. So and I think this is a size about 20 that should do it.
Mm-hmm.
Então, o que ele diz que não dá para encontrar tantas pessoas específicas para todas as áreas. Ele disse que as pessoas com mais alinhamento, ele já trouxe, as pessoas que são mais da ideia, mas tem pessoas que ele precisa de área específica. Por exemplo, ele falou que você acha muita gente que conhece de criptomoeda, de tecnologia, mas você não acha um eletricista, por exemplo, no meio libertário, às vezes com as ideias alinhadas. É um pouco mais difícil, de repente, numa área específica, encontrar uma pessoa com a ideia também alinhada, além do conhecimento que é necessário. Ele falou que está com a equipe aí, Tomás, 104 foi o número?
Não, 24 pessoas.
24 pessoas, aqui na América Central, né?
Isso.
Ele falou
e 4, sendo 5 deles advogados, então tá muito forte no legal framework ainda.
Sim. E ele disse que essa equipe, ele vai formando conforme alinhamento, mas também conforme a experiência de vida dele. A experiência que ele teve de vida, com as pessoas com que ele trabalhou, que ele sabe que tem uma especialização, que são boas naquele assunto, ele trouxe para próximo da equipe dele.
Isso aí.
Certo. Interessante. E, no caso, tem uma equipe específica para a divulgação da ideia, No caso, são pessoas direcionadas a fazer com que isso aconteça, por exemplo, em Honduras, Panamá, Brasil. Querendo ou não, é um trabalho de comunicação, porque para fazer as pessoas acreditarem, incentivarem um projeto desse porte, precisa conversar com diversos tipos, seja o pequeno empreendedor, seja o médio, seja até o grande empresário. Tem esse trabalho, no caso, esse networking. Ele tem uma equipe específica para isso, ou ele está formando? Como funciona?
Titus, continuing on this question, she's asking more about marketing and sales, pretty much. If you think of it as an enterprise, of course, public relations involved. You're the PR guy for what I've seen. But so how do you organize this team, which has a broader view, like more of a global view, and not the specifics of that country? And well, how many people are involved, and how do you plan to actually, spread the word? Let's say that, like, of course, like an interview like this is part of it, but what's a global strategy for that?
Yeah. I mean, spread the word wherever you can, but once a project is up and running, that is much more attractive than just telling the concept, right? So we would reach out to the libertarian crowd and to people in the country and say, look, here's what we offer. And this is going to happen again this year. We will look for residents. We will say, here's an application procedure. You can even become an e-resident. And we were talking about Liberland, right? They were getting 400,000 applications in the first year. I mean, can you imagine? And there's really a demand for such things. I know that. So I think once this is up and running and we can really say people now we can come and can apply and we are building houses and that, it will spread the word around. And of course there will be marketing and public relations, the press, which is mostly critical to such projects, has to be addressed. We have to show that this is also to the benefit of the country, which it is, and there are conferences where people like me are holding speeches, where other people who are there. I mean, if you have a look at my website, you will see what type of experts I have gained for advisors. They are major architects or Sandy Springs private governance organizer, Oliver Porter from the US, and other people who have specific experience in that front. And so far, I think this is not much different from a big real estate project, but there's this liberty dimension which is new. And in so far, you have to carefully select the people who can help you, but it's on the other hand, it's not rocket science. It's not so difficult to explain what we are doing. And I want to encourage competition. I want you guys, and the listeners of your show to start your own free private cities.
Awesome.
Right?
Awesome.
So that we get more competition on the market of living together.
Yeah. We actually, I just thought of something when you're talking about that. We had, I think it's easy to actually confuse things whenever we think of a libertarian city, a free city in general, because we think of it as a very well programmed enterprise, which might not be the case specifically. So we have this good example of that, which is Brasilia, our fake capital, like that for the wrong reasons was taken out of Rio de Janeiro and went to the central west part of the country for development reasons. Some pretty much Keynesian thoughts behind it, and of course the getting the politicians away from the population. But it's what happened to Brasilia was that Niemeyer, our most famous communist architect, made this bright city on paper, which is dysfunctional in reality. So I was just like, I'm sorry, I went a little further than I was pretending to be. but how are you managing like the first design of the cities? Like, is it going to be centralized in a way, or how's that gonna you know?
They're different. Yeah, I know what you mean. These artificial cities. This is not what we are planning. I mean, there probably will be a core which is more planned in advance, that is for aesthetic reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's more market-based urban order, as Patrick Schumacher calls it. It's an organic development, right? And because we don't have the money to spend billions, right? So we have to start small in a core and say, okay, you have to follow a certain style. But there are other areas, maybe one I call the freak zone. You can do whatever you want, right? But your neighbor might build a skyscraper in front of your house and paint it pink. Not my problem, but you know what? It's a freak zone, right? But there are other zones, and where there's more regulation how to build and a maximum level and things like that. But we are not going the Chinese way or Arabian way, putting empty houses and then hope that people will come. No, the market should develop that, right? We want to attract the developers make their projects, and then the next developer, and then over time, maybe the center of the city is moving into another direction. That is how we go forward.
So pretty much free neighborhoods inside a free city. I mean, with some regulation in some parts of it, but yeah, that's really interesting idea.
Pessoal do Voxil, da Lige, ele falou que a equipe dele é baseada mesmo nesses contatos que ele tem. A divulgação dele está sendo muito ele em palestras. Ele fala que é muito difícil apresentar o conceito, mas como ele já está para lançar a cidade esse ano, a primeira Free Private City, the first Free Private City, ele vai apresentar a ideia já com o negócio rolando, vamos dizer assim, com o projeto acontecendo. Então ele falou que vai ficar muito mais atrativo a partir desse ponto, atrair essas pessoas. Aí ele já como ele já tem um investimento alto já para começar pequeno, a ideia dele é começar pequeno e depois começar expandindo. Até o Tomás fez uma pergunta sobre o design da cidade, por causa do que o Rio de Janeiro tem toda aquela expansão, vamos dizer assim, mal feita, ou porque as pessoas tiveram que fugir para as áreas onde eram mais baratos devido a...
Brasília especificamente, né? Saindo da capital do Rio para Brasília.
Exatamente. Aí ele falou, também perguntou como seria esse design em Free Private Cities. Aí o Titus fala que não tem nada assim muito planejado. Em alguns lugares vão ser de um jeito, outros lugares pode ser que tenha uma freak zone, uma zona onde o pessoal construiu uma casa triângulo, uma pirâmide, alguma coisa assim, e tá liberado, entendeu? Mas também vai ter áreas onde o pessoal, vamos dizer, uma pessoa comprou vários terrenos e falou, não, as casas têm que ser desse jeito, desse modo. Vai ser contratual e você escolhe as posições que vocês querem fazer. E para a apresentação do projeto, ele falou que ele tá indo em muitas reuniões, ele está fazendo muitos discursos, ele está indo em vários lugares apresentando o conceito e vai ajudar muito mais a apresentar esse conceito a partir do momento que a cidade já esteja rolando, já esteja acontecendo os primeiros movimentos da cidade.
Yeah, I mean, you have to build a network that comprises of political contacts, of investors, of people who can make it happen, experts, and once this is in place and you have one or two free private cities, the first are always the most important, the most difficult, right? Mm-hmm. But once they are there, it's much, much easier for number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, because you replicate just what you're doing, right? And I've been approached by another country from Europe, and they've asked me about the law in this Central American country, if they can copy that, right? So it's easy that you say, okay, once it's there, it's much easier than if you're starting something completely new. And I'm happy to be a part of that and support your Brazilian efforts. Even if it's not a free private city, you can start as a limited autonomy, that you have some kind of things, or only people living together who are like-minded, and then you try to get some extra freedoms from the government. So there's a big variety of things you can do, because it's too difficult to start with a new Hong Kong type of autonomy in a country like Brazil, because it means giving up power for politicians. And as we know, that's nothing that is very popular amongst politicians.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Yeah, that's a little bit of what Partido Novo is trying to do. disarm the city from the system from the inside, of course, and not through a revolution or how the left would see it work out and not work out in in our view, of course.
Yeah, I mean, if you the biggest or most problematic part is the getting the legal autonomy within the legal framework that it's existing in the particular host nation. That is by far the biggest problem.
Yeah.
And it's often a long, lengthy process. But if you can, I mean, normally in many countries, you need a 2/3 majority in parliament to change the constitution to make such a thing possible.
Yeah,
this is a tough job, right? But in other countries, you can do it as a simple law. Then you need only the majority and things like that. So then in other countries, you already have some kind of semi-autonomous zones. Then it's even more easy. So that is something for you to find out what is possible in Brazil and what you think is doable, realistic in the next 10 years. And I'm happy to support with my experience, with what I've learned so far, and with my ideas.
That's really good to hear.
Vocês entenderam? Ele falou que depois da primeira cidade fica muito mais fácil para ele transportar a ideia até para o Brasil e tudo mais. Está dizendo que um dos maiores problemas é a legislação. Legislações dos países, assim, quanto mais livre, mais fácil implantar, quanto mais fechada, muito mais difícil, porque ele teve muita dificuldade de encontrar os países. No entanto, ele já tem mais uma host nation, mais uma nação, vamos dizer assim, interessada na ideia, além do projeto Caribe. Acho que dentro da Europa, não foi, Tomás?
Tem na Europa, exatamente. Tem na Europa que está mais avançado.
Sim, aí ele falou que já tem outros lugares que já estão querendo replicar a ideia do Free Private Cities. E ele está disposto a ajudar em tudo. Então ele acha muito importante essa aliança do Partido Novo e tudo mais para começar a criar as aberturas, vamos colocar assim, para que o Free Private Cities possa ser implantado no Brasil. Então ele falou que meio que cabe a gente procurar um pouco mais, a gente abrir um pouco mais a nossa própria legislação, influenciar um pouco mais para que o projeto possa chegar até ao nosso país de origem, vamos dizer assim, tudo mais.
Legal. They're just saying thanks for the openness, and I can say that same thing. Like in general, I've seen that you're a really open guy in this sense. Anybody that has any kind of enterprise, as you said, it doesn't have to be exactly a private city, the same model, but just more autonomous regions and more freedom in general. Any enterprise that comprises this kind of thoughts and ideas, certainly your help will be very well received and will be really well advised, because as for what I could see, you're that's a little bit of your life goal in general. Like as you said, you could have been just and in any island, pretty much in a free system, but that would be too private. It would be pretty much yours. So what's the fun in it? You want to share that with other people, and like taking that as one of your life goals is really incredible for the whole community. So I say thank you, like personally, but also for all our free private enterprises and whoever wants more freedom in the world. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a big demand, and it's also motivating for me when I hear from people like you that you are really so interested in the model and understand the model from the first minute, right? I remember obviously in Brazil there's particular interest in those things. I remember when I was holding a speech in Vienna in Europe, and after the presentation, a young guy came to me. He said, "I'm from Brazil. I'm 22 years old. I know about your concept, and I want to die as a free man in a free private city." Wow. 22 years. Wow, this is a big motivation for me, and let's make it happen together.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's really interesting to hear.
Titus,
very, very thoughtful.
My personal thanks. It's wonderful your idea. I'm really impressed, and I thank for your work, for your time. Thanks for your idea, your initiative. Thanks for all. And as the man say, I want to die as a free man.
In a free city. In a free
In a
city.
free city. Thanks.
Excellent. And maybe you can mention the freeprivatecities.com website, because we have a Brazilian version also.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's perfect. And
yes, and for anybody who's interested, there's a newsletter on the website where you can subscribe. It's not coming often, but if something is happening, like we are going public with this Central American project, or there's another project, people will be informed there, and then can apply to another website where they are looking for evidence. So who is interested in following and I will inform what's going on in the world. You have maybe heard about the Seasteading Institute. I'm on the board of the Seasteading Institute as well, and they are also making progress. So all these startup societies movement is getting traction.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you very much.
Titus, thank you very much.
My pleasure, and talk to you soon. And I hope I will see you someday either in Sao Paulo or in Central America in the first free private city.
Yes,
wherever.
we will
I'm
see.
sure we'll do. Auf Wiedersehen.
Wiedersehen. Goodbye. Gracias.
Goodbye.
Ciao.